Hey, yo. Hey, yo. Come on, let's do it one more time. Hey, yo. All right. Before I start, I dedicate this story to Paul Clifton, Godwin Amuzu, and all the brothers in classrooms bringing your magic. I love you. I had a dope childhood. Some of the best memories I have are of Saturday mornings when I'd wake up, fix myself a giant bowl of Cocoa Puffs, go down to the TV and watch my favorite cartoon, the X-Men. And when the cartoons were done, I'd grab my pile of X-Men comic books and keep reading about my favorite characters. As I devoured these stories, I wasn't burdened with the anxieties of my homework or my chores. Girls. I was free to imagine myself in new worlds, worlds where I could fly, worlds where I could control cars with my mind, worlds where I existed in utter bliss and tranquility. And some of the most important lessons I learned came from those comic book stories, including every superhero's journey starts with trauma. Knowing my love for comic books and superheroes, it's no surprise that I would choose a career with children and not without my own trauma when it came to the education system. I majored in English literature and creative writing at the University of Colorado, Denver. Go Lynx, not Buffs. And when I graduated, I became a reading coordinator at a local K-5 charter school. A year later, I traveled to South Africa on a Fulbright scholarship where I also taught writing. I learned so much about my identity as an educator in South Africa, and I decided that that's what I wanted to do upon my return back home. However, when I talked to my old charter school's principal about returning, he said, hey, you have this Dean of Students position. You should apply for that. Now, I wanted to teach reading and writing, but I figured being on the admin team would give me a seat at the table. In reality, I was hired to be a policeman. As the only black person on staff, it's problematic. See, I graduated summa cum laude, so why was I being situated as the brawn and not the brain? I had immense gifts to offer students in the classroom, but instead I was placed as the school's cop, an enforcer, a heavy, and not their teacher. I had the potential to grow young people's intellect and spirit, yet the primary role of my dean position was to control their bodies, not to enrich their minds. But I accepted the job, hoping to gain the power to create change in the school. Picture this: 4 white walls, all blank, no windows, cold white tile on the floor. When I started my dean position, my office was a sterile cage, and I sat in that cage day after day as black boy after black boy was sent to me out of their classroom. And I tried managing their emotions, but most days it was kicking, screaming, crying. My office was a tinderbox, a chamber of suffering. And that was my everyday, from 7 in the morning to 6 at night. The boys were being pulled out of their classroom primarily because their white teachers couldn't see them for who they were and all their magic. And any type of behavior a black boy was doing that wasn't silence, that wasn't submissive, it was unruly and needed to be corrected. Now, you can guess, after months of this, I started to slide into depression. And then one day, I was talking to a young man in my office about the movie Black Panther. And his face lit up, and he immediately went from anger to curiosity. And that's when I decided to rush home and grab all my comic books from when I was a kid and bring them to school. After that, when kids were sent to my office, I didn't punish them by having them sit in silence. I gave them a comic book, had them read for 10 minutes. Then we would talk about the characters' dilemmas, which enabled us to talk about all the problems the students were having in school and at home. We talk about our superpowers too, about how we can overcome and cope with the challenges at school and what we thought were the villains and superheroes in our school. And then we started to create our own comics. That enabled us to reappropriate our stories and our narratives, just like the movie Black Panther did for us in cinema. And that was the first movie I had ever seen that fully represented my culture authentically. So much so that those boys and I, we co-created a comic book club that very summer based on Black Panther. Now, it's not a surprise I left that dean position after that year. But that comic book club, that sparked something. And it sparked me to start a youth program dedicated to harnessing the power of media, like podcasting and comics and video games, to build spaces of belonging and safety for young people. I named it Yebo. And in South Africa, that's a word of affirmation and agreement, and that basically means hell yeah. It also stands for the Youth Empowerment Broadcasting Organization, and we're both an in-school and out-of-school youth program, and our home is in Empower Community High School in Aurora, Colorado. We have a recording studio, a multimedia maker space for students, and they can take courses in podcasting, competitive gaming, and even video game design. Our work is centered around play, but it's also about learning skills that lead to our liberation. Through podcasting, students recognize the power of their voices and their unique stories. In competitive gaming, students are learning how to be gamers who practice inclusivity and challenge the core notion of winning and losing. And by learning to redesign video games, we are teaching students to rebuild their world instead of accepting it, to move from consumers to producers of culture, from passive recipients to agents of change. We are leveraging play to reimagine our relationships with the world and with each other through digital practices. We are helping young people recognize their inherent 21st century digital literacies as superpowers and how to use those powers to create new futures for themselves, just as I did when I was dean. This really hit home for me in 2020 when COVID forced everyone into digital learning spaces. I took an online class that you've already heard about here tonight called Critical Digital Pedagogies from a person that you heard from here tonight, Dr. Arturo Cortez. And in that course, we were challenged to pair up with young people to play a video game and then to think about who we were and how we were showing up as learners and teachers in those spaces. My gaming buddy was a former Yebo student who you happen to hear from tonight, Jaden Wynn. And he introduced me to a game called Minecraft. Before that, I thought Minecraft was just for little babies. If you never played Minecraft, it's deep. You see, you get these raw materials, and you get to use them as tools to build anything you want, houses, ships, machines, anything in your imagination. Jaden decided to challenge me to build an artifact from my childhood that brought me joy. So I built a massive telescope, the size of a mountain, literally. As a kid, my first telescope was a gift, and I'll never forget the first time I saw Saturn's rings with my own eyes. That sparked my lifelong passion for outer space. Building this artifact during quarantine helped me recenter joy. And I had lost so much of that during lockdown, like many folks. And this project reconnected me with my passions and all my beautiful nerdiness. It also inspired me to change the course of how we work. Because of this experience playing Minecraft with Jaden, I began to change the focus of the curriculum at Yebo to center video games and play as dynamic learning spaces. And it changed not only what we do, but who was doing it. I began seeing Jaden, at the time 18-year-old, less as a student and more as my teacher. He was the expert in these spaces, and that shifted my perception of him, allowing me to see him as a colleague as well. And so today at Yebo, over 80% of our staff are young people under the age of 23, including Jaden, who's 21 now, and acting as our program manager. The seemingly simple act of playing a video game online not only helped me reclaim my joy, but it had a powerful impact on redesigning my organization towards relational equity and radical creative liberation. The young people I get to work with every day are my heroes. Together we fight our villains, many of whom still exist in the schools and the public education system we frequent. But no matter what game we find ourselves in, No matter how big or strong the villains are, we can change our lives with a single act of joy. That's my superpower, a playful imagination. And what's cool about this is every single one of you have it. We can all reimagine greater worlds for ourselves through the freedom of play. And with that power, you too can become a hero of your own story, a hero that transformed your traumas into giant bowls of Cocoa Puffs and Saturday morning cartoons. Wakanda forever.